What's up everybody and welcome back to the channel. Now we all know that or by now it's clear that certain mods and mod combinations on weapons are far superior to just other ones in general, and a clear trend that we are seeing is that there are certain mods, we're talking Fortress, Killing Spree, Moaning Winds, Dark Sacrifice for instance, which are clearly very powerful mods and are usually present on people's weapons that are pushing high CT clears or very high fast CT clears, so world record clears, something like that. But it could be that you are either you're in two other camps, and that means that you're either a player that hasn't gotten access to any of those mods or decent rolled weapons with those mods on, and so therefore you might feel that you're locked out of high level content and that you can't play. And the idea here is that I will show you some other combinations of mods that are almost on par, or in certain cases, especially in co-op, might actually somehow be better. So that's the first camp. The second camp is you might actually have those very powerful weapons and you might have done these high clears or so. And so maybe this can just suggest some alternatives that you can try, because of course we do still have to have fun while we play the game, and it does kind of, I know at least for me, Bone Shrapnel in Killing Spree and Bone Shrapnel and Dark Sacrifice has become kind of like a little bit boring. So let's look at, I've got 5 examples here today that we can look at and just basically discuss some, I suppose, strategy around them. And depending on what happens down the line, because we don't know, I mean, I hope that this doesn't happen, but we don't know if people can fly, can potentially down the line look at something like Fortress, which is a really powerful mod just on its own. It's just really powerful and a lot better than basically anything else out there. Or for instance, they could look at I doubt Dark Sacrifice, but Killing Spree, Moaning Winds for instance, which is also pretty much on every single high level Devastator build is using this, or Trickster build is using this. So they might down the line bring their power levels down and bring these more in line with some of the other mods. And then of course some of the ones we look at today and other ones that you might have mentioned or thought about or tried out already might actually rise up a little bit in terms of strength, and you might consider using them. But in any case, enough with that. Let's go ahead and jump right into the first one. Now, with a bunch of us basically receiving, I guess you could say, welfare legendaries, but with the restoration, a lot of players got legendaries that they weren't expecting to get. They got large amounts of them, and in some cases you were blessed in getting legendaries of weapons that you were looking for, and other times you got something that you're like, what the hell is this, or why would I use it? And some of those might actually be in these categories here. So the first one here being that I got an Amber Vault. And this Amber Vault, what I ended up doing here is Amber Vault by default rolls with Killing Spree. So what I ended up doing is combining Dark Sacrifice with that. So Dark Sacrifice is of course from the Fatal Symbiont, and Dark Sacrifice is interesting because it's one of the things that they essentially fixed when they brought that very famous Friday patch online. And so Dark Sacrifice is really like proper meta now in terms of damage, and does a lot of damage. And essentially what this weapon does is it combines the stacking damage effect that you get from Killing Spree with just the flat increased damage effect that you get with Dark Sacrifice as well. That essentially makes the Amber Vault, this particular gun here, just a straight up bullet hose. This deals a shitload of damage and is exceptionally good at dealing with stuff from close to mid-range. Now, due to the fact that it's a double gun, the problem is that it's not that great at long range because of the recoil of a double gun not being that good, and just in general double guns not being that accurate. But anything that comes up close to you is going to get shredded, and everything and that's at medium range is also going to get completely hosed. One other thing though as well is that most of these weapons that we have here I've excessively tested on my Technomancer, and so they might favor firepower builds more. I just wanted to put that out there. But does that mean that these won't work in a character that is trying to use anomaly damage? No, I think they still will, but they will by far be the most effective, I imagine, that in a firepower build, whether that's just a firepower build or a bullet firepower build. But in any case, so this Amber Vault here, you know, just exceptionally good at dealing out a lot of damage. I just as a side note, I want to say that unfortunately right now with the game working the way that it works is that everything is essentially like a time rush, right? So when you're doing CT, high level CTs, you're trying to complete these expeditions, everything is time attack mode, right? But that might not always be true. And the thing is that I would imagine, or I would love down the line, that our weapon choice is determined by, you know, whether we want to go fast or whether we want to be able to suppress things or whether we want to be able to apply, you know, debuffs to stuff by applying weaken to things and all of that, that sort of thing. So unfortunately, that's not, you know, really viable right now. Like right now, it's just deal as much damage as you can, as fast as you can, go, because you're trying to finish something in time. And co-op turns out being exactly the same way as well. There's not so much, you know, one guy doing like, I mean, it happens sometimes, right? But there's not so much one guy doing healing, another guy doing debuffs, and another guy, doing the killing blows or something like that. It's mostly just a mad rush of trying to deal as much damage as fast as possible. So maybe I guess you could call it the meta or something like that changes down the line or something when they perhaps look at alternatives to, you know, time attacks and expeditions being the only way to, you know, farm endgame content. Maybe that happens. But in any case, that was just a side note, and I went off on a bit of a tangent there, but but yeah, okay, cool. The second one we have is I took a Thunderbird, a reasonably high rolled Thunderbird at 93.4, which comes with the mod Ultimate Storm Whip on it, and then I attached Strings of Gauss to it. Now, Strings of Gauss comes from, you can get it from two different pistols. Bolt and Thunder is one of them, and the other one is the Disintegrator. And essentially, this turns the Thunderbird into a great mix of a crowd control weapon and a decent single damage weapon. So sometimes when you are putting mods onto a weapon, you have to sacrifice one thing for the other. So you might make your weapon extremely good at dealing a lot of damage to one enemy at a time. So it's, you know, just like about lasering stuff down. Or you might build a weapon that is really good at dealing a lot of AoE damage, but not so good at a lot of pinpoint damage. Sometimes you can create a weapon, and that's, you know, like for instance, if you have something like Moaning Winds and Fortress and so on, when you have those combinations, or Killing Spree and, for instance, I would say Dark Sacrifice, you know, something like that, then you are dealing with weapons that are kind of good at both. But yeah, in this case, what this does is the Ultimate Storm Whip is hitting lightning on your primary target every second, and then the Strings of Gauss is just stringing additional lightning, you know, to the targets around it. So this is very much like, I would say, something like a budget bone shrapnel Killing Spree kind of setup. And the cool thing about this is that you actually get a level 2 version of Ultimate Storm Whip, just called Storm Whip, which, you know, just by default comes on epic weapons, or just by default rolls on its own on weapons. And you can still do this combination. The only difference being that Storm Whip just doesn't trigger as often. Instead of triggering every second, it triggers every second. So there's some room for viability here. I've even built Ultimate Storm Whip and Storm Whip on one weapon, which is quite, you know, funny as well, because for every 1 second you get the effect twice, and every off second, every second you get 1 times the effect. So it's 2-1, 2-1, 2-1 the whole time. So it's kind of like a fun gun. You're gonna just be shooting lightning and everything all over the place. It does decent damage, especially if you get a high enough roll, and if you combine it with a bullet build. So yeah, that's the Thunderbird. Now, the third one we have here is more like I would say more like a meta weapon, but again featuring bone shrapnel. But instead of something like Killing Spree or Dark Sacrifice in the second mod, I'm using Deadly Disturbance. Now, Deadly Disturbance comes from a legendary called the Imploder. And essentially what you're doing in this case here is you're stacking 2 AoE effects on top of each other. Bone Shrapnel is already dealing an AoE damage effect when you kill something, and it's applying bleed to a bunch of stuff, and it can do that every second, which is really powerful. Bone Shrapnel really is top tier. But then you're putting Deadly Disturbance on top of that as well still, which says that critical shots basically create an unstable anomaly effect, which also deals an AoE effect across 5 meters. And this can proc every 3 seconds. So I've taken to using this gun a lot when I play monster, Heart of the Wild and so on, where you have essentially large groups of monsters funneled towards you and all running at you in clusters, because this just completely shreds them and it deals a whole bunch of just AoE damage to everything around it. So mostly, stuff that comes at you in groups, dies almost instantly. I did, however, put it on the DLC tactical rifle, or for that matter, I could have put it on any other weapon that had bone shrapnel, or any other tactical rifle that had bone shrapnel. It's only on the DLC one here, and it's not even a very high roll. It's 88.4. But the point is that the tactical rifle is already really good at just, like single point damage. So in cases where I'm only shooting one thing, like maybe it's one bird that's left or one brood mother that's left or something like that, the weapon is still not that bad at actually dealing, with that threat. But this definitely excels at just punching out a whole bunch of AoE damage. And this is a really fun gun to use in a co-op scenario, because you can essentially be the person that mops up all the trash, basically. So this is an example of something like that. Then when we go to the fourth one, let me just get through my notes here. We have Absolute Zero. Now, I think Absolute Zero is pretty damn good, and a side project of mine right now is building a viable freeze Technomancer using Borealis and just stacking mods and everything like that, and making like this build that just essentially locks the battlefield down with freeze. There's one or two things holding me back from that at the moment, and that is that Borealis is still not exactly working like the way that it's supposed to, the set buff. And I think that this is one of those builds that you really have to get the mix of your armor mods. It plays a really important role here, because what you'll want to have is additional damage to frozen targets. You want to have the additional mods for Cold Snap. You want to be using Cold Snap. You want Borealis and all of that. But then, as this gun is here right now, it's, not an exceptionally high rolled item. It's 87.9. It's a standard variation assault rifle, but it's got ultimate freezing bullets on it, which freezes every, stuff that you shoot every 1 second. So it procs like all the time. And then it's got Icebreaker, which is just the generic level 2 mod that, drops on a whole bunch of weapons, but essentially any killing shot on a frozen enemy explodes it, very much like the Cold Snap mod effect that you get from Borealis, the chest piece that explodes it and deals damage to everything around it. So these complement each other a lot as well. Now, this built into a build that uses a lot of status power, so the frozen targets stay frozen longer, and perhaps some kind of like resistance breaking or anything like that. I really do think that it's viable, and again, it's one of those builds that if you play this alongside someone else that is doing like a lot of damage, you are going to be offering a hell of a lot of utility to that person, because they might be fully glass cannon, and this is going to allow you to lock down bosses, ads, stuff in the air, everything like that. And freeze is such a powerful effect, because not only does it actually stop the target, but it stops the target from doing whatever they were doing. So if they were channeling an ability, or if they were shooting you or anything like that, for however long they're frozen, they're doing nothing to you. So that's time that they're not damaging you or your co-op partners or anything like that. So I definitely think that it's viable. It's probably better in co-op scenarios, although I am stubborn and I want to make it work in solo, and I'm gonna make it work in solo, but that's definitely still a work in progress. But this Absolute, as it is here right now, perfectly suits that kind of, build. And then for the last one is a very high roll. There's actually a guard roll, Inferno Seed. That's one of the welfare legendaries that I got with the restoration. And instead of keeping Moloch's, the level 3 mod that was on there before, I replaced it with Embalmer's Rage. Now, Embalmer's Rage, of course, comes from the shotgun, the high roller. And essentially what this does is it turns this weapon into almost like a mini bullet build on its own. What I mean by that is that it kind of makes, the 40 bullets that you have in this gun, or 45 bullets that you have in this gun, last a lot longer than just normal 45 without any kind of reloading mechanism. And that's because the Embalmer's Rage, of course, procs and then makes every shot after that a critical shot. And Brain Eater says that critical shots don't consume ammo. Now, I have to admit that in playing with this, and I've played with this weapon a lot, because again, this is a legendary that's already also a tactical variant assault rifle. So again, suiting like a Technomancer, long range, fighting very well. I've played with this gun a lot, and it requires a little bit of a certain playstyle, and that is that you really have to be cognizant of how you eliminate things. It's almost like you could call it a combat puzzle or something like that, and that is that if 5 or 6 mobs drop down to the ground, you almost in your head quickly have to work out the most efficient way, like drop the smallest one first to proc the Brain Eater effect, and make sure to proc the Embalmer's Rage effect, and then use those 5 seconds to hit the hardest target, or the heaviest, the healthiest, the strongest target with all of your critical shots, and then you can start mopping up the small ones again. This gun does struggle a little bit when you're left with just one mob out in the open, and you don't have really a way to proc another amount of the Embalmer's Rage. And definitely the fact that this is a guard roll, which it has a high firepower roll, helps it with dealing more damage to a single target. But again, this is one of those guns that you kind of have to you hoping that there's some trash running around and you can shoot them and go there. Now, Brain Eater is a level 2 mod, so it drops on a lot of different guns. So I've tried this on a bunch of things. I've tried this on LMGs, I've tried it on double guns, I've tried it on rifles, and so there's a lot of experimentation that you can do here, and so on. I just simply put it on this Inferno Seed because I have like 6 Inferno Seeds, and I just thought, what, fuck it, let me try it. And it deals a lot of damage. It's not exceptionally good at AoE, but it is really good at lasering something down, especially if it has some ads around it. So that's it, guys. Thank you very much if you've watched it this far. Definitely a lot of the suggestions I made today is not going to be meta breaking or anything like that, but it is also about just possibly looking towards other mods if they inevitably, maybe, hopefully not, I'm saying please don't, but if they nerf some of the other ones, or just if you're trying to play something else, or if you just started out and you did get a bunch of legendaries in the restoration, but none of them were death shields or any of the other ones that you're looking for, and you might have gotten some of these, and they might let you compete at a higher CT level than you thought you could before. But that's it for today. Thanks very much for watching. Thanks for the support. I had a stream last night where I'm leveling up a pyro, and the support was great. Thanks to everybody that came out and watched and had fun with me. We talked and laughed and things like that, and it was really awesome. I mean, the 3.5 hours just kind of flew by. Definitely doing one again on Thursday where we'll continue on with the pyro. So see you there. And I think that's basically it. So I definitely want you to have a good morning, a good afternoon, and a good evening wherever you are. And until next time, fucking cheers.
They want the best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me. They want the best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me. They want the best of me.